There's a town hidden deep in the mountains, shrouded in fog and silence, a place where the earth remembers every scream it's ever swallowed. I came here because of a letter. I stayed because the ground wouldn't let me leave. They told me I was the seed, that the town needed me to survive. Now I'm buried alive, wide awake, with hundreds of eyes in the soil blinking, remembering, if you're watching this, I was like you, curious, lost, just looking for a place to belong. But Dresden Hollow doesn't offer belonging, it offers binding, and now I'm the story it tells to keep itself alive. Part 1. The Letter from Dresden Hollow. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 37, 6 months clean, and the last living member of a family I barely remember. At least, that's what I thought. Until the letter arrived, it was slid beneath my apartment door. No stamp, no return address. Just my name written in the kind of handwriting you'd see carved into old tombstones. Inside was a single sheet of thick, yellowing paper. The words were written in deep black ink that looked hand-dipped. It read, to Ethan Cole, blood of the Hollow, bearer of the name forgotten. The house is yours now. It waits. Come home. Signed, your uncle, Silas Morn. I don't have an uncle, not one I've ever known. But something about the letter clawed at a place deep in me, a place I hadn't touched in years. It didn't feel like a scam, it felt old, like the words themselves had been waiting a long time to be read. I had no job, no ties, nothing worth staying for. So I packed what little I had and drove toward the mountains, toward the one place the letter named Dresden Hollow. It wasn't on most maps. I had to dig into old forums to find any mention of it. A coal town, apparently, died out in the late 60s, population unknown. The deeper I drove, the worse the signal got. GPS froze, then blinked out altogether. The road narrowed into gravel, then into something less than that, barely a trail at all. Trees pressed close, too close. The sky dimmed even though it was still afternoon. Fog rolled in like it had a purpose. And then, without warning, the town appeared. Dresden Hollow sat in a basin, surrounded by hills like crooked fingers clutching a secret. The welcome sign was splintered and leaning, half swallowed by vines. It read, "Welcome to Dresden Hollow, let the soil remember your name." I should have turned around. But the road behind me was gone, not just obscured, gone. I couldn't see it, not even in the rear view. It was like the fog had erased it entirely. The town wasn't abandoned. Not exactly. There were people, walking slowly, watching me. No cars. No sounds but the crunch of gravel beneath my tires and the quiet creak of porch swings moving without wind. I parked in front of the house the letter had described. An old Victorian with green shutters and a wraparound porch. It looked like it hadn't been touched in 50 years, but the porch light was on. Dim and flickering dot. As I got out, a woman in a long black dress passed by with a basket in her arms. She stopped, smiled faintly, and said, "Welcome home, returning son." I blinked. "Sorry, what?" She didn't answer, just walked on like she hadn't spoken at all. The same thing happened 3 more times, different people, same words, returning son. Like I was part of some prophecy or tradition they'd been rehearsing for generations. Inside the house, it was musty but intact. Dust coated everything like a thin layer of ash. Furniture still stood where it must have always stood. Photos hung crookedly on the walls. Stern people in stiff collars. all of them staring straight ahead, with eyes just a little too wide. One man looked almost like me. Same jaw, same eyes, but dated, old. Like a copy passed through time. The fireplace was cold. The floor creaked beneath every step. There was a staircase to the second floor, but I felt drawn to the base of it. Something about the shadows beneath. I got on my knees, shone my phone's flashlight under the stairs. That's when I saw the claw marks, not scratch marks, not the kind a raccoon or a cat would leave. These were deliberate, deep, angry, a pair of them, side by side, carved into the floorboards in long, frantic gouges. And just as I was leaning closer, the flashlight flickered. A voice whispered, small, hoarse, and impossibly close. A child's voice, will you dig us out this time? I froze. My heart stopped, then thundered. The voice came from beneath the floor, not under the staircase, beneath the house. I backed away, slowly, trying not to breathe. We're still down here, the voice said again. We remember you. I don't remember falling asleep that night, but I woke up in the armchair near the fireplace. My phone was dead, even though I'd plugged it in. Outside, the town was silent. No birds, no wind, just fog, thick as cotton, pressed against the windows like it wanted to get in. I opened the front door. Every single person in the town, dozens of them, stood in the street, facing the house, not moving, not speaking. One of them, a man with a crooked smile and dirt under his nails, lifted a hand and pointed at me. The ground remembers, he said. Then they all turned and walked away in perfect unison. I slammed the door and locked it, though I knew somehow it wouldn't matter. I don't know what Dresden Hollow is. I don't know who Silas Morn was, and I sure as hell don't know what they mean by returning sun. But I know this, something beneath this house is alive, and it knows my name. I came here looking for a home. I think I found a grave, and I think they're waiting to bury me in it. Part 2. The graves that shift at night the next morning. I walked the town trying to shake off what I'd heard beneath the stairs. The voice still clung to me, like dirt under my nails. We're still down here. It didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a warning. I needed answers. And there's only one place old towns keep their ghosts. The library, Dresden Hollow's library, was a squat, two-story building nestled between the abandoned post office and a rusted-out barber shop. Its windows were smeared with dust and grease, like it hadn't been cleaned since the Eisenhower administration. A hand-painted sign hung above the door, flaking and faded, but legible. Knowledge keeps the dead at rest. Inside, it smelled like wet paper and mildew. Rows of crooked shelves loomed in the dim light. There was no one there at first, just silence. The kind that presses against your chest. Then she appeared, a woman, maybe late 60s, pale as milk, standing at the end of one aisle with her arms crossed. Her voice was dry as parchment. You shouldn't be here. I told her I was looking for family history, told her about the letter, about Silas Morn. She didn't blink. Don't look into things that want to stay buried, she said. Dresden Hollow keeps what it takes. I asked what that meant. She turned and walked away. Not another word. Just disappeared into the stacks. I searched for hours. Most of the town records were either missing or damaged, like someone had gone through and ripped out entire sections. But I found a reference. A recurring note in an old almanac, buried between planting charts and rainfall tables. One phrase, scribbled into the margins in red pencil, repeating every 20 years. The remembering. No explanation, no ceremony details. Just that phrase and a date. The last one, September 3rd, 20 years ago. The next one, just 3 weeks from now. As I stared at that date, the lights in the library flickered. The air went cold, suddenly, and completely, like a vacuum had sucked the warmth out of the room. I put the book back, trying to pretend the chill wasn't real. Back at the house, I noticed something new in the yard. A fresh mound of earth, about 3 feet long, right beneath the old oak tree. I hadn't seen it before. It wasn't there. When I arrived, it was wrong. Like the ground had been swollen from the inside. I thought maybe some animal had been digging. But then I noticed it again. Another mound in the neighbor's yard. And another across the street by dusk. I counted 6. All fresh, all new. And by morning, they were gone. Not dug up, not disturbed. Gone, like the dirt had settled itself. Like nothing had ever happened. But in my backyard, that mound still remained. So I dug at first. It was just dirt. Damp and thick. Then I hit something solid. Wood? No, not quite. A box, not a coffin. Smaller. I opened it. Inside was a cracked hand mirror, old and smeared, its glass warped like water. Beneath it, a child's shoe, brown leather, untied, caked. In mud, still wet. And beneath that, ... My driver's license, my current license. The same one that had been in my wallet that morning. Only this one was covered in dirt. The picture was faded, like it had been soaked. The edges were curled and rotting. My hands started to shake. How the hell did it get there? I looked back at the hole, at the shoe, at the mirror. I felt like I'd just unearthed someone else's nightmare, but it had my face in it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound was a footstep. Every creak in the walls felt like someone exhaling just beyond reach. I sat on the couch with a flashlight and a kitchen knife, as if either would help. Then I heard it, scratching, not loud, but close, slow, persistent, like fingernails on old wood. It was coming from beneath the floor again. I walked barefoot, slowly, over the warped boards, following the sound. It moved when I did, like something was crawling just under my feet. It led me to the far corner of the living room, where the floor dipped and rotted with age. I dropped to my knees and pressed my ear against the boards. Silence. Then scratch, 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 dash, scratch, dash, scratch, dash, scratch, dash. Beneath was blackness, packed earth. My flashlight caught something moist and pale, twitching slightly. I leaned closer, and then I saw it, an eye, wide, round, human, staring up at me, not dead, not blinking, just WATCHING. I froze. I couldn't even breathe. The eye blinked once, and then it was gone, vanished back into the soil like it had never been there. Just a dark smear left in its place. The dirt didn't collapse. The hole didn't widen. It was like whatever had been there simply slid back into the earth. I replaced the plank with shaking hands, nailed it shut with rusty nails from the basement, and then I sat and listened. All night long, the floor breathed. It rose and fell in time with something that wasn't me. Something slow, ancient, waiting. I don't know what the remembering is, but I think I just met the thing that remembers, and I don't think it's done with me. Not yet. Part 3. The Church of Hollow Saints. I woke Sunday morning with the weight of sleep still clinging to my skin, like I'd been lying under something heavy all night. My dreams were muddy and wet, filled with whispers in the walls and the distant sound of someone digging. I needed to get out, to shake the feeling that the town was closing in. Instead, I found myself walking to church. I don't know why. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe I thought someone in that building could explain the things I'd seen, the graves, the eye, the voice under the floor. Maybe I was just desperate. The Church of Hollow Saints sat at the far end of town, past the sagging general store and the gas station with pumps that hadn't worked in decades. The building leaned slightly to the left, like it had grown tired of standing upright. Its windows were stained with scenes I didn't recognize, not crosses or saints, but trees with open mouths, men kneeling in soil, hands reaching up from the ground. The door was already open. Inside, the pews were packed. Everyone in town was there, faces I'd passed on the street, faces that had watched me from porches and shop windows. All silent, all staring forward. The preacher stood behind the pulpit. He was tall, impossibly thin, and pale, so pale I could see the map of his veins beneath the skin. His eyes were glassy, and his lips looked bloodless, like someone had erased the color from his mouth. He didn't look alive, but he spoke, and when he did, the room went colder. "Let us remember the one who has returned," he said. "Let us honor the vessel." He spoke slow, each word deliberate, carved out of silence. He never looked at anyone but me. The ground forgets without blood. The roots hunger for memory. The flesh will bind the soul to the soil. He has come home. He has come back. It was a eulogy for me, spoken like I was already in the ground. No one moved. No one blinked. Not even the children. I wanted to leave, but something made me stay. Some force that pressed me down into the pew like invisible hands on my shoulders. I turned to my left. A little girl sat beside me, pale skin, stringy black hair tied with twine. She looked about 7, maybe 8. Her dress was dusty, her shoes too small. She was drawing in a notebook with a piece of charcoal, her fingers blackened. She looked up at me and smiled, like she knew me, like she always had. "My name's Maybell," she whispered. I tried to smile back, but my face felt hollow. She showed me her drawing. It was me, buried in a wooden box. My mouth sewn shut, my eyes wide, dirt pressing in on all sides. Around the grave stood townspeople, smiling, clapping, holding hands. Their eyes were hollow. Their mouths were too wide. "You're the seed this year," she said softly. "You've got to help the roots, remember." I stared at the picture, my throat dry, my heart thudding against my ribs. "What do you mean?" I asked. She looked confused by the question, like I'd asked her what air was. "You're the one who came back," she said. "The hollow always needs a story to keep breathing. You're the story now." She went back to drawing, this time sketching a tree with hands for branches. I left before the sermon ended. No one stopped me, but I felt their eyes follow me out. Not out of anger, out of reverence, like I was something sacred, something already spoken for. I ran back to the house, locked the doors, packed my bags, clothes, phone, keys. I didn't care where I was going, I just knew I had to go. I got in the car, turned the engine. It roared to life. For a moment, I believed I was free. The road out of Dresden Hollow curved through dense woods. No street signs, no markers, just dirt and trees and silence. I passed an old pine tree with bark torn on one side. Then I passed it. Again and again. 4 times, same tree, same wound, same crow perched on the same branch. My GPS blinked back to life for a second. Then it started spinning, the blue dot turning in slow, endless circles. No direction, no route. I checked the gas gauge. Full. I hadn't filled up since I got here. I drove faster. Trees blurred. Fog pressed harder. The road narrowed, then widened, then narrowed again. Still the same tree. Still the same crow. Still no way out. Eventually, I stopped, got out of the car, screamed into the woods. Nothing screamed back. The air tasted thick, sweet, like rotting fruit and earth. I looked up, no stars, no moon, just black sky pressing down, like the whole world had sunk below the ground without telling me. I turned around, and the road behind me was gone. Not hidden, gone, replaced by trees that hadn't been there seconds ago. I stumbled back into the car and drove again. No destination, no plan, just movement, just hope. But Dresden Hollow was always there. Every turn led me back to it. The gas never dropped, the roads never ended, and the sky never changed. I wasn't trapped in the town. The town was trapped in me, like a root in a corpse, like a secret in the soil, like a story waiting to be buried again. Mabel's words echoed in my head. You're the seed this year. And I finally understood. They don't kill you in Dresden Hollow. They plant you, and now they're digging the hole. Part 4. The ones who still breathe down there. I'd had enough. The looping roads, the whispers under the floor, the girl with her drawings of me in the dirt. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers, not riddles. So I went to the one person who might still be pretending this place made sense. The mayor. Her name was Marlene Bishop. She lived in the only house in town with fresh paint on the shutters. A perfect garden, too perfect, like it was carved out of plastic. As I walked up the path, I noticed all the flowers were white. Not a single color among them. She answered the door like she'd been expecting me. Calm, eyes pale blue, nearly grey. She wore gloves, even though it was hot outside. Ethan Cole, she said. The soil's been talking about you. I told her to cut the games. Told her I wanted the truth. What is this town? What is the remembering? Why is everyone acting like I've always been here? She invited me inside. Everything in her house looked old, but untouched, like a museum piece that never gathered dust. The tea on the table was still steaming. The ground forgets, she said, sitting across from me. It forgets the shape of its people. It forgets their names. Every 20 years, it starts to slip away. The houses rot faster. The fog thickens. The dead start wandering. I asked her what that had to do with me. She looked me dead in the eyes. It needs someone to hold the story. Someone alive. Someone who remembers even what they never lived. I laughed. I didn't mean to. It just burst out of me, sharp and loud. You want to bury me alive to feed the town. She didn't flinch. Just sipped her tea. Planted, she said. Not buried. There's a difference. I stood up, furious. Told her I wasn't staying. That I wasn't anyone's vessel or seed or sacrifice. I told her the town could rot as I reached the door. She said one last thing. Rotting's exactly what it's doing. I didn't answer. I didn't look back. But her words followed me home that night. Things got worse. I was brushing my teeth, staring at myself in the mirror. My face looked pale, stretched. The bags under my eyes had darkened. My lips were cracked. But it wasn't just exhaustion, because when I moved my hand, my reflection didn't. It stood still, then slowly, it lifted its own hand. Just a second. Too late. I stumbled back, smashing the toothbrush on the counter. The mirror shimmered, like water, then returned to normal. I didn't sleep, and when I tried, the dreams found me anyway. I was underground, packed in dry earth, unable to move. The soil pressed against my chest, tight and unforgiving. I couldn't scream. My mouth was sewn shut, just like Mabel's drawing. Above me, I heard voices, chanting, then silence, and then the sound of breathing, slow, ragged, inches from my face. I woke, gasping, drenched in sweat. It was noon, or so I thought. But when I blinked, the sun was gone. It was dark again. I'd lost the day. Hours vanished in seconds. Time was slipping. Or maybe I was. I tried to journal, to track what was real. But the ink smeared. No matter how long I let it dry, the pages warped. One sentence kept repeating itself, even when I didn't write it. You've already been here, that night. I saw something in the corner of my room. A man, tall, motionless, standing at the edge of my bed. His face was expressionless. His clothes hung like soaked cloth, and where his eyes should have been, nothing, just smooth skin. He didn't speak at first, just watched, then his mouth moved. No sound came out, but the words filled my head like they were buried there all along. You came back wrong. Let us fix it. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. I blinked, and he was gone. The window was open. The air smelled like damp leaves and copper. I couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't come in. He'd come out. From the floor, from the walls, from whatever lived underneath this rotting house. I wandered the streets in the middle of the night, hoping to find someone, anyone, awake. But the town was still. Even the insects were silent. I passed the library, the church, the diner. Then I saw the newspaper office. I don't remember going inside, but I remember the smell, old paper, scorched and sour. The place was abandoned. Dust in thick clumps. Rodents scurried in the walls. But the archives were intact. Stacks of yellowed papers. I pulled one out at random. Dresden Hollow remembers its roots. September 3rd, 1903. There was a photograph beneath the headline. A group of townspeople stood in a circle, smiling. In the center, a coffin, closed, hand-carved, covered in carvings, and standing beside it, holding a lantern, was a man who looked exactly like me. Same face, same jawline, same scar above the eyebrow. Dated 1903. I checked another paper. The remembering approaches. 1923. Same face, older gaunt eyes, sunken. Still me, again, in 1943. Then 1963. Every 20 years. Always me. I dropped the papers. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. How long had I been coming back here? How many times had they planted me, dug me up, put me back? Was I born Ethan Cole, or was? I groaned. The screaming started as I left the office. Low, at first. Then rising, it came from beneath the sidewalk. Beneath the roads, the buildings, the trees. The whole town groaned with it. A deep, terrible wailing, like 100 voices caught in the dirt. I dropped to my knees, covered my ears, but it crawled into my head. You are the seed. You are the soil. You are the story. And in that moment, I knew I hadn't escaped a grave. I'd crawled out of one, and now, I think it's calling me back. Part 5. Roots in the shape of hands. The next morning, I went back to the Church of Hollow Saints. I didn't know why, I just ended up there. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way the air always felt a little colder around that place. Maybe it was something deeper, something the town had already planted in me. The front doors were unlocked. Inside, the pews were empty, dustier than before. Cobwebs stretched across the altar like veins. The preacher was gone. No trace of him. No sound, no light. Just the echo of my footsteps. And beneath it, something else. A hollow sound. I knelt near the pulpit and tapped the floor. Hollow, the boards there had been nailed down recently. Different wood, lighter, a trapdoor. I pried it. Open. A staircase led downward into blackness. The air was wet, heavy, like it had been breathing all this time, waiting for someone to come back. I lit a lantern I found at the base of the stairs. Its flame flickered violently, like it hated being down there. The tunnel walls were lined with root systems, thick, pulsing vines that looked less like plants and more like arteries. Some were fused into the stone. Some moved ever so slightly as I passed. The tunnel led into a chamber. That's where I found them, coffins, dozens of them, all propped up like exhibits in a museum. Each one carved with a face, and not just any. Face. My face. Different ages, some younger, some older. One with a beard I've never grown. One with burn marks across the cheeks. All of them, me. Each one had a plaque. Some names I didn't recognize. Others were mine, just spelled differently. Ethan Cole, Ethan Cole. E. Morn. Dates ranging back to the 1800s. Each one spaced exactly 20 years apart. I stood frozen, surrounded by versions of myself. Each one boxed and sealed like a pressed flower. Then I found the last one. It was already open. Inside, a journal, bound in cracked leather. My handwriting. I opened it. Pages and pages of entries. Memories I couldn't remember writing. Descriptions of the town, of Maybell, of the preacher, of the same things I'd just lived through. Written in my voice, my hand. The last page was stained, water damaged, barely legible. If you're reading this, you made it back. You don't have much time. The ground shook, a slow, rolling tremor that came not from above, but below. Dropped the journal. The flame of the lantern twisted wildly. Then I heard the cracking, not wood, not stone graves. I ran from the tunnel, back through the church, out into the cemetery behind it. The ground was breaking open in wide, jagged lines, cracks splitting the earth like mouths, but no corpses rose. Instead, roots, thick, dark roots, burst from the graves, writhing like serpents, slapping the air. They weren't just growing, they were reaching for me. They coiled and uncoiled like they were tasting the air, smelling something they wanted, something they'd waited for. They moved in my direction. One root slithered toward my leg. I stepped back, but another coiled behind me. They didn't move like plants. They moved like fingers, like hands. I turned to run, but the townspeople were already there. Dozens of them, silent, lined up along the perimeter of the cemetery like mourners at a funeral. Some of them held candles, others held nothing. Their eyes were glassy, their mouths were moving, but no sound came out. A chant, maybe, but too low to hear. It was like they were reciting something the earth had taught them, and in front of them stood maybe LL. She looked different, not older, but older inside. Her eyes were sharp, wet with something ancient. "Don't run," she said. "Please." I took a step back. "I need to get out of here," I said. "I'm not part of this. I didn't choose any of this." She shook her head. "But the Hollow chose you. You came back. You always come back." "Why?" I asked. "Why me?" She looked down. "Because you're one of the few who remembers. Not up here," she tapped her temple, "but down there." She pointed to the ground, to the roots, to the thing beneath. "You're the story," she said. "And if you leave now, the town dies. But if you stay, we all remember." The wind shifted, the trees leaned in. The sky dimmed, even though the sun still hung in the sky. The roots curled, patient now, waiting for my answer. I looked around. The graves weren't graves anymore. They were mouths, hungry and ancient. The coffins weren't meant for the dead. They were vessels, memory holders, seeds. I looked back at the people, at the faces that didn't age, at the hands that held nothing but trembled with expectation. The story of Dresden Hollow wasn't in books. It was in people, buried, watered with blood, fed every generation, and I was the next one in line. I had two choices: run and let the town collapse into rot and forgetting, or stay and become part of it. Let it bury me. Let it remember through me. I didn't speak, but I felt the soil move beneath my feet, and deep, deep down, I think it already knew what I'd choose. Part 6, buried but awake, they came for me just before dawn. I didn't fight, not because I accepted it, but because some part of me had already started to fade. Like the Ethan who arrived here wasn't the one being taken. The townspeople moved quietly. No ropes, no chains, just hands. Dozens of them, wrinkled, trembling, pale. Some were children's, others were cracked like bark. They didn't drag me, they carried me through the cemetery, past the church, beneath the sky that didn't seem to hold a sun anymore. The fog didn't resist them. It parted as we moved, revealing what had been hidden behind the older tombstones. A staircase carved into the earth, each step lined with roots, each one pulsing dot. At the bottom was the pit. Not a grave, a chamber, a mouth in the earth. And it had been waiting for me. Marlene Bishop, the mayor, stood at the edge. She held a single candle that didn't flicker. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but everyone heard it. "This is not death," she said. "This is binding." The crowd wept, not with joy, not with cruelty, but with reverence, grief, love. They loved me, and that was the worst part. I was their salvation, their memory, their anchor to a world that had started slipping into the dark the moment they stopped planting people like me. Maybelle stood at my feet. She didn't smile. She held my hand. "Don't scream," she whispered. "It only makes the song louder." They placed me into the coffin. It was warm, like it had held a heartbeat not long ago. The wood was carved with symbols I couldn't read. Roots curled along the inside, cradling me like fingers, holding me still as they began to lower the lid. I saw them, the eyes hundreds, blinking in the dirt around me. Eyes of every sacrifice before me, watching, remembering, and one by one they closed, as if giving me their trust. The last thing I saw before darkness took me was the sky narrowing to a slit, and the tears rolling down Mabel's cheek. Then, The lid closed, and the singing began, low, deep. Like the sound of earth breathing, I screamed. But they sang louder. I kicked, pounded, bit my tongue, but it didn't matter. Dirt began to fall, first in sprinkles, then in fists, then in waves. It rained onto the coffin like time itself, sealing me in. The song grew louder, until it became the only thing I could hear. Then, silence. Real, deafening silence. I don't know how long I was down there before I felt the first one, the root it, slipped through a crack in the wood, across my chest. Then another, curling around my ankle, my wrist, my throat. But they didn't squeeze. They merged, and then the pain began. Not the sharp kind, the remembering kind. It started in my bones. Images, feelings, lives rushing in all at once. A girl named Elsie who was buried in 1883. She died clutching her mother's necklace. A man named Jonah who volunteered in 1903 because he thought it would bring back his son. A preacher who sang his own eulogy. Hundreds of them, thousands. Their thoughts, their pain, their joy, their memory. It bled into me like water soaking into cloth. I felt their lungs give out. I felt their last words. I knew them, and they knew me. I wasn't Ethan Cole anymore. I was Dresden Hollow, every brick, every name, every loss. I felt the church's foundation rot and rebuild. I felt the fog creeping in for the first time. I remembered the day the mines collapsed, the day the river dried up, the day the town forgot how to be remembered and had to learn a new way, through blood, through roots, through me. I don't know if I'm breathing anymore. I don't think I have lungs, but I feel God. I feel everything, and just before it all fades, completely, just before I become nothing but the hum beneath this town. I remember one last thing. My voice, it's cracked, dry, but it's still mine, and I use it to whisper one final warning. If you find this place, run, before it remembers you too. If you made it this far, you've already stepped into the hollow. But there are darker places, still deeper woods, colder graves, stories that haven't been told yet, but will be. So if you're brave enough to keep listening, there's more waiting for you here on Haunted Echoes. Like the video if the story chilled you. Share it with someone who sleeps too soundly, and subscribe before the next tale finds you.